halfway through the 7th turn here, and things are getting a little rougher in terms of the amount of stuff that I'm doing, because I'm doing in-motion attacks, the column attacks, etc. You can see they kind of worked out well. I've got a English unit now cut off out of supply. That's in trouble, but it can fall back to here and it won't die there. Of course, it could also try to break out, but that's a very painful process. Doing that, first of all, causes a strength point for every division involved in the attack, and counts as surrendered units if lost. Plus, because it's not in supply, it'll only be a quarter strength. So my safest thing might be to move here and try to be a bigger speed bump. That'll cause some problems, because without the infantry there, this guy can kind of, well, just get surrounded by the artillery. The problem is, of course, he can be attacked, and he's at lower strength too, but it will take troops to attack that. And you kind of don't want to attack these fortifications with troops, as we found out. Of course, I can bring the artillery up, keep troops to garrison, to screen it, and blow the fortification away. That may be what I have to do. Attacks up here north of the Schelde were not very successful. The Germans also rolled kind of poorly on some of the follow-ups here along the French line. They've got this big gap, though, that, well, they can't exactly stream through it. But they can pump troops around to try to maybe pocket the English or turn the French flank. The problem is they're getting spread a little thin. Over here they also didn't have terribly good rolls. Down here some of their artillery play, not great for them. They did gain this hex though, which is kind of a bonus, forcing the French to desire to fall back maybe. I'm not sure. I'm really worried about the entrenchments in the sense of, okay, so I can start to build them, but I gotta hold the line. Well, it's not like you're unable to defend yourself while you're building them. So, you know, if I've got a decent line, but I can't keep falling back the way that I'm doing, I'm gonna have to find a place that I can defend, and it may be the Somme. I mean, where else, you know? And that really means just pulling out of northeastern France, back to the line that, you know, traditionally was useful. It does cut my line tremendously, and I think it may be time to do it. I hate giving this guy up, though. It was really a mistake to leave him. Yeah, well, there wasn't much I could do. There really wasn't. The line was weak there. The only thing would have been to fall back, and I didn't feel like doing that yet. I feel like the Belgian army is going to be destroyed and unable to rebuild, really. Well, trying to do the best I can with the Allies. I've pulled back to a line along the Somme, and pulled out of northern Belgium, well, as far as I can, but I'm kind of leaving a gap here I don't like. All I've got is kind of this line here around Lille. I just couldn't get enough things out. The rail lines here, there's too many dashed lines, which could only bring one unit out. At least I've got a line there. Maybe I can get some withdrawals and keep some of my integrity together. There's too many troops down here, but I'm trying to shift them up. See some of these big 7-4 Algerians and Moroccans, the North African stuff, which is pretty decent and pretty solid because it was down in the south where the Germans just haven't been hitting hard. In fact, the German effort has not been hitting here, which is part of the reason why there's too much there. If the Germans had been doing their historical counterattacks along that line, well, one, I wouldn't have as many supplies that I could start slowly funneling up, because the effort in the north would be in a bit of trouble otherwise. Uh-oh, here's a unit I didn't see. Got to get them out of there. That's two. Yeah, they're pretty weak. we'll get them as far as we can, I guess. Another opportunity would be to strengthen these French here. I think there's more chance of success of living together than apart. But yeah, I think that I've totally flubbed it with the Allied defensive line. I should have fallen back last turn, I think. This is a terrible loss. He's not going to die. He can stay there indefinitely, but he will die, and then he'll be gone forever. And that's a big unit. Not really a 9, it's a 7 once it's destroyed. Plus I've got the Belgian army trapped there, which I think is what's historically supposed to happen. I don't know what happens to their headquarters, though. I assume they get it back in 3 months. It's not a permanently destroyed unit. Otherwise they got some problems. They can't do anything. They're just stuck there. They're not allowed to move. They could attack if I move next to them, but they've had to retreat from out of Brussels, and that's really put me in a tight bind. I'll be moving into the next month, it looks like. We're going to hit the monthly special turn. We'll cover that. That's when I can start these trench constructions. And you can bet this entire line is going to be entrenched. We'll see how long it can hold together, but I've got at least up to here people in locations that I want them. You know, this is the long-term line, and at least I hope. Oh, well, the trench interphase between the months was kind of a painful experience. First of all, maybe because nobody had trenches yet. So every single hex along the Allied line, very definitely I wanted to have a trench marker, not up here, but you know, everywhere where I'm planning on being to defend. These guys are planning on pulling back. They're not going to form one, although I could have conceivably swung up and defended this line just as well. I've really left these guys hanging out there, I'm realizing. In my speed to get to the Somme. Well, mistakes are mistakes. They're not going to bother entrenching. They're coming out. But the German line is entrenched all the way down its length as well. And I've got little markers under every little one of these. That's a little more questionable up here in the north, for example. I'm pretty sure the Germans aren't going to stay in those hexes. But at least for a short time, I mean, there's no cost to building the entrenchments. And it could be conceivable that the line shifts up there, and I don't want to be without that line if that's the case. So even all the way up to here, because I don't know what I'm going to do and what my eventual line is going to look at. I might end up pocketing these guys, being there long enough that I actually do want the trenches there. I've got the Belgians still stuck behind me. As far as I can tell, they can do nothing all game. I might as well keep them trapped there, right? That's a little ahistorical, but I'm certainly not going to expend much effort on capturing them. I've got to decide that the Belgian headquarters comes back, because when I look at the scenarios, the later scenarios have the Belgian headquarters in it. If this is the expected situation, that they get pocketed like this and slowly killed off, well, obviously they have a headquarters later on. It isn't permanently destroyed. Alright, well, we'll move here into September. I think we'll see what the Germans can get away with here. Alright, I just want to chime in. I found an answer in the new rules, because I'm getting worried about these Belgians being here. Country interior is defined, and I'm beginning to think, well, that's not really the interior anymore. That's sort of the frontier, as being an urban city personnel center, which I think we have in Antwerp. It's hard to tell, but that little black part up at the top may indicate that city center type. and also a food production location, which means they have to hold this space. If both of those fall, well, if one of those falls, that whole Belgian army is going to surrender, except that they're on a fortress, so they won't. So I guess that was kind of moot, but it does give them certain aspects there. It was something that was worrying me while I was taking a crap, actually. All right. Well, the Germans are attempting to punch forward. You can see they kind of pushed their position deeper in here and kind of crunched through here. This is German as well. They're driving the French back. The poor Belgians are stuck here. Here's the thing. I've done sort of a race to the sea well before the Germans historically did. Well, either side really did. And created a continuous front at this early stage that pretty much seals off the Belgians. There's no, I mean, I could land some English here or something and try to operate back there. But as it stands, they're still open to whenever I attack them. Eliminating or trying to wipe out these French is one of my goals, along with punching as deep as I can. Over here, I've pulled my artillery off the line there. I didn't like that trade-off I was making. I'm going to rail them either up here or perhaps up to my main focus of artillery right now. I'm still bombarding the Belgian fort, but my main focus is on getting rid of this English fort. Oops. I did not launch an attack I meant to here, I think. Yeah, these guys meant to attack there. Let me take care of that as well, because I want to clear this fort out of the way so I can build rail up there. I'm already kind of stretching beyond my rail hopes. I've got this block here. I can rail like 10 points of supplies forward. Supplies are really becoming an issue now, because there aren't many coming in as reinforcements for anyone. The French are really kind of struggling. They're down to, their biggest armies have 17 each. And they're really stretching to the point where, gee, I don't know if I have enough to defend. The Germans are cutting back too. And in terms of points, well, the Germans finally picked up over here in Lille a couple of hex sides that are actually urban hex sides. Those are worth 25 points each. That's a huge, well, what seems like a huge fall, but the Germans are going to be taking 65 a turn next year. So, you know, there's a big amount of points to go around here. And I don't know how easy it is to make either France or Britain collapse. The numbers, whew. Surrender is 2,500 for France. Right now, though, we're at 320. That doesn't sound that long from now. You know, another year. But the battles aren't going to be this bloody. You know, once the trench warfare kind of really settles down, I can't imagine the kind of casualties that we're seeing in this early part. And certainly not going to see a lot of cities fall in that part. So the next month or two, I think, is going to be pretty pivotal. But we'll see. We'll see where we end up. And we finish up the first turn of September, really with the French just trying to push more and more forces northward. Trying to extricate themselves still from up here. They haven't really managed completely, but they got one unit down. That's probably all wrecked. But it'll slow the Germans down a little bit, they hope. Of course, with the mobile attacks, Germans can strike that and then still position for an attack up here in the north where things are kind of weak. It's going to be tough, though, without overstretching the Germans. The Germans are in a lot of trouble in terms of their own lines are not too solid at this point. They've got this Belgian problem, which really isn't a problem in the sense of, well, we got to do something about it, but it's kind of annoying. You kind of feel like you should eliminate it. It can be done during the winter, of course. Elsewhere, though, we just have a steady weakening of the line here. We get this huge headquarters stack here, but there's really not a lot of strength there. That's trying to conglomerate and push further north. Some units, some supply being shoved northward. It doesn't really matter on defense, but I just want to reposition it while I can. I have the extra rail points to spend on it. Probably not absolutely the most efficient defense. That's probably one of my gripes with this is you really kind of have to look and say, I want to defend everything equally. And, you know, hey, here I got a river line, I can go a little weaker there, but everything else I want to kind of smooth out and make it so the Germans, at least locally, can't find places to punch through easily. But that's kind of an annoying thing to have to do. I don't like having to do that. In something like La Grande Guerre, you have some control over that in the sense there aren't a lot of pieces comparatively, and you also have this restriction that you got to keep your armies assigned to where they belong for the most part. So here you've just got everything, and you can reassign stuff wherever you like, which may or may not be more historical. There's a debate that you could make for either case, which is that the armies generally did stay together, but they also did loan each other troops, and you could shift things. Anyway, I don't think the Germans are going to make any kind of massive breakthrough and be able to get to Paris. I think the race to the sea has prevented that from happening. But I do think they're probably going to push the Allied line off the trenches, which is something that kind of disturbs me about this game. It feels like there's a lot less capability to create a defense in depth than I'd like, at least early in the war. Which may make sense. There may not have been defense in depth early in the war. But also that it takes so damn long to build these trenches. Now granted, a full entrenchment did take forever. But there's no sort of halfway ground. I don't get any defensive bonus out of this, and I had to start it at the beginning of a month. In some cases, that means my line is not perfect. Because, for example, here I'm ahead of the river line. I don't have an option there. That's as far as I could get. If I could have dropped below the line, I would have, but I couldn't. Well, without using a rail point that I didn't use, that I probably could have. Okay, so maybe it is more flexible than it looks, but I ended up in a bad position, and then because I can only do the trench construction at the beginning of each month. It would be a lot more complicated if you could start trench construction on any turn and it completed a month later, just like the replacement headquarters being 3 months later. Is painful, but I don't know. In some ways, it feels like there's something artificial going on with the, first of the month, hey, you got your paychecks now, you can dig trenches, or something along those lines. Anyway, that's enough speaking on that. Up it